line out all of these.
Excellent. What brand is this?
This is Larkbird.
Nice. I like it.
It's yeah, it's cheap, but it works really well. So the name of the project?
It's called JOGL, for Just One Giant Lab.
Just one. JOGL.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what do you do?
The mission of JOGL is to create a digital infrastructure to enable communities, basically people coming together from all over the places in the world, to be able to work more effectively on scientific problems or innovation problems, but without the hassle of institutions or institutional processes. So it's thinking more like, how do you create a decentralized laboratory made of individuals who have nothing to do together, they have no title, but they have a common mission. They want to solve a given problem. So let's say tuberculosis, for example.
Yeah.
Or and so instead of trying to organize some complicated, complex, cooperation between institutions, it's like no. Let's take the individuals and even the small organizations. Everybody is welcome. They can come together in what we call a giant lab. And at the end, they are free to indicate what they want to share, like their skills, some resources, some assets, funding, etc. And this is given then to the community, and anyone can just come and present an idea, a project. And the idea then is to get all this creativity coming. People can start interacting with people they didn't know before. Say, hey, I have this idea. I'm looking for someone who can help me on data science or something like that. So they can create teams through the platform. Then they can make a proposal. The proposal can be reviewed by the community. And once it's positively reviewed, they can get access to the resources that has been brought together by the community, basically. And this process it's replacing the way we create teams, projects, we allocate resources. It's much more efficient, faster, and much more fun as well.
Right.
And so we initiated the project 3 years ago. We launched the platform 3 years ago. Now we have a bit more than 7,000 people on the platform and about 450 projects. We grew massively through the COVID era because at the time when COVID hit, we were just like a very small platform. I usually use as a metaphor that we were like a Cessna,
Like a what?
A Cessna, like the little plane. I don't know if you know about that.
No.
Yeah. So imagine like the smallest plane you can imagine, where you have like only two seats. And then we had this massive arrival of people that were looking for a place to start collaborate, around how to, solve the COVID crisis. And JOGL was one of the rare places where they could do that. And so where we started with 500 people in February 2020, and 2 months later, we were like already 5,000. It's like massive growth. And so we became like a kind of a cargo plane, but still with Cessna wings, And so we had to reinvent ourselves extremely fast. And in that period, we have established what is right now as some of the core pillars of JOGL. One being what we call community review. So this process where proposals, projects are reviewed by the community, but in a very robust, and transparent manner. We have actually analyzed a lot of these rounds of evaluations and the scoring function, etc., the bias, and we just published a paper about that, showing that it is as robust, if not more robust, than traditional approaches, except that it's super scalable because projects and reviewers, usually when you organize a peer review, the hardest, the roadblock is finding the reviewers. And here the reviewers are also the applicants. So when you apply with a project, in order for your project to be eligible, you need to review other projects. What that means is you're not just a client of the system, you have to bring value to the system as well. In that sense, the stoichiometry, the number of reviewers per number of projects remains always the same. for 10 projects or 4,000 projects.
The ratio between
the ratio,
them,
yeah, the
it's
ratio,
same.
exactly.
Okay.
And that enabled us to create also a continuous evaluation framework where every 3 months there was a new round of evaluation. And that completely changed the dynamics, because what it means is you're not just asking for resources once, like with a big deadline. If you don't make it, too bad for you, come back next year or something like that. Now here, if you don't make it, you can try 3 months later and get more mature, get feedback from the reviewer, from the community. If you do make it, but the project doesn't work at the end, it's all right, because at the end you have only provided like a small amount of money. We work through microgrants, like a few thousand, for example. However, if your project do work, you have interesting results, you can still come back, get evaluated on your new results, and if the community likes what you're doing, you get funded again, and this as much as you want. So we got project that got funded 4 times, for example, and so it's super agile, and it's very agreeable for the project leaders as well, because they really feel like they're evolving with the rest of the project, the rest of the community. They get to learn, they get always feedbacks. They don't feel alone. Like, it's not like, okay, we are a team, it's all about ourselves, let's make it. No. It's the projects are sharing, what they do with each other, and because they review each other as well, they learn about what others are doing, and this encourages and fosters. Really fosters collaboration between projects, but also merging, like convergence. And so yeah, this has been absolutely amazing. And at the end, when we measure the impact of this approach, when, for example, we look at how much, for example, funding we gave to the community, and what it produced at the end, we gave just 120,000 euros to 36 projects, which is pretty good, as a start. It could be much bigger compared to some other funding projects, but especially when you look at COVID. But out of those 36 projects, 22 functional solutions were created and more than a dozen scientific papers published. Wow. And they were touching as much diagnostics, treatments, medical devices, prevention, education, basic research, social sciences. It's very diverse. Also, about half of the projects were led by women, and projects were also led by people that came from, all the continents. So very high diversity, and most people actually didn't know each other before as well. We had projects led by researchers, but also by professionals working in companies or hospitals. We also had a project led by students. Even one actually was led by high schoolers. So what's interesting here is this community evaluation process. Once you're validated by it, we don't care who you are. You could be a researcher, fine. You already have a title, you're respected. But if you are nobody, like, why are you going to knock on the door to get some resources to develop your idea? It's very hard. Here, anyone actually could apply, and so these high schoolers applied, and the community liked their project, and they saw that it was completely feasible. So they got validated, they got the money, and with this, they could actually even create more meaningful relationship with local. They were based in Seattle, with local partners there, and they developed a solution to track COVID in schools and universities.
Okay.
So it's been a really fantastic journey where we've seen people that raised, that became leaders, of that project, or even of their small community. Everything that the community was doing was openly shared, so everything is open source. So we really push for the question of scientific and technical commons, really as an alternative to the typical path that normal academia and normal startups are taking. So we're not saying that we're trying to create an alternative, it's more like a complementarity with what already exists.
So, okay, it's interesting you say that, because in my mind I've got a picture of a university. You're recreating the infrastructure and the relationships and the funding of a university, but with open access to all age groups all over the world,
That's right.
With a peer review process built in as well.
Exactly. So at the end, if you bring that much diversity, the danger is how do you recreate trust? Like, especially with people where that doesn't have any titles, that you didn't go through a vetting process, to get your title at the university. So, if you're just a high schooler or you're a student there, or just a nobody, or even like you don't have like an active network, you don't have a social network that can vet for you. Well, how are you going to trust that person? Nobody knows that person. But however, if that person has a good idea and is able to present it nicely, is able to convince some of the people in the community to join them, to do that project, and the project is positively reviewed, because at the end the risk is not high for the community to say yes. I think it's okay to tempt it because we work with through microgrants. It means that it's a great chance actually for anybody to get basically to get a go at their own ideas, try to express their own creativity, and explore what is an interdisciplinary international project that is done in decentralized manner. And we see this as a really great framework for any kind of networks or community around the world. Like, for example, we are exploring how we could apply this just for students. Like, imagine if all the students in the world could collaborate easily to create projects, and the project were not evaluated by teachers, but by the students themselves. So through it's a collective intelligence of the students that will decide what do we want to see right now, and then the best project get access to a little bit of funding, and but also the idea is that all the schools and universities where the students are based would also provide a little bit of resources, like access to maybe a lab, access to a workshop, to a fab lab, or something else, and say because it's hard for universities to provide an equitable access to the resources because there's just too many people. And they don't have the culture of creating internal competitions. Like, okay, we want to see good projects, and we're only going to give access to our facility to the best projects. They don't usually do that. And here the idea is not only to bring them projects that have been validated. So it's like we give you awesome projects, and so it's going to valorize your own facilities, your own students. But also, you could force one rule, which is projects have to be validated, has to be done by at least two students from two different schools.
Okay.
So you push also collaboration, interdisciplinarity.
Yeah. So you're creating collisions between parties that wouldn't usually interact.
Exactly. And so you can imagine, like, for example, pushing for more art science projects. So it's at the end, we're not lacking talents, we're not lacking resources, they are just locked, we're not lacking assets or funding. So it's more about how do you create more liquidity
and liquidity of ideas and liquidity of capital.
Exactly. The fact that there are we have also a burgeoning community in South America, in Africa, in Asia. And
so that must make a huge impact, because on average your grant sizes are about $3,000 to $4,000, something like that. And the impact that you can create in Africa with $3,000 to $4,000 dollars is hugely more than can be done in the West.
Exactly, and even beyond that, you realize that most African countries don't have a proper national research network, or facilities, and it's the research and innovation there is largely underfunded by the state, and so just being.
But is that a benefit in a way, because you can create that infrastructure without all of the legacy hang-ups that we have? Because so many people now are tied up in universities, networks, and aren't able to.
The problem is that they're still tied up, with heavy administration.
In developing countries.
Still, so they get like all the bad side without the benefits.
Right.
Yeah. So here, what we enable is the creation of a side layer where assets, talents, can be transported and can more freely interact. They still can, claim their attachment to a given university or institution, and that's all right. One example I can give you is where, let's say you have a network of researchers working on like different laboratories working on like brain neuroscience, and we're talking with one of them right now, and they do a lot of open data, they do a lot of open source hardware for their studies. There are about 500 researchers.
They what, sorry?
500 researchers. So it's a pretty large network, but they are struggling to just find ways to bring some of their own, funding to this network in order to facilitate collaboration. It's like they're hacking, they're trying to hack the system in a way that is not efficient. They're really taken back, by their own institution and the way they can spend their own money. The way we envision to change this with JOGL is so this network can come, they can create a space on JOGL, so then you get to see like all the members of the project. They can start organizing code, etc., and peer review. But at the end, they can also create what we call a community fund, and that community fund is a way for anybody in the community to pitch in some funding, and say, let's say that you have 20 labs and each lab bring 10,000 euros. That becomes 200,000 euros. But this 200,000 euros doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the community and is allocated according to community review. So anybody can say, hey, I think we should work on this, like make a proposal, and it's being reviewed and it's accepted, automatically it's been funded. And so this way, nobody is really responsible. You don't have like this feeling of top-down, governance as well. And everybody is welcome actually to contribute. And at the end, it's not anymore about who's leading the movement or the network, as it is a lot, in academia. It's probably about the ego and the leadership of certain type of actors. It's more about how do you put the problem at the center, like what are we trying to solve? And so we all come, around together. And so that's what we did with COVID, and it worked so beautifully. And now we are trying to offer this, like these blocks to any communities and networks doing either research or innovation, around the planet. And so the vision for JOGL is, in 3 years we gathered, almost 10,000 people on the platform. I think in 3 more years we'll probably get to 100,000. At that point, we will already be actually the largest laboratory in the world in that sense, like number of talents, in dynamics, and imagining also the number of assets and funding, that will be identified through this. So our ability even actually to create mobilization, ad hoc mobilization on, let's say you have a new pandemic, and you need to mobilize extremely fast. Well, even though we actually succeeded doing this with our small infrastructure 2 years ago, in 3 years it will be like completely demultiplied. It's going to be quite amazing, I think. And same for doing research on climate, for example, or developing open source solutions. But the ultimate goal is to really have as many people interested in trying to use science to develop a better world. So can you imagine by the end of this decade to have actually several million, as well on the platform, and so for funding bodies and anyone interested in funding research like open science and especially scientific commons and technological commons, like foundations, we say, why would I actually go through a normal university that is going to eat and burn like a big part of it? It's going to be highly inefficient. When I can just actually bet on a given community working on this, where I know that it's going to feed much higher diversity of people and projects and ideas, that is going to take much more risk, and going to be more efficient at delivering. And so this is
presumably retain ownership of the intellectual property as well.
So that's the reason why I'm here. It's that we don't do that yet. It's like everything that happens right now on JOGL is open. So there is no IP basically.
Okay.
And that's freely define everything, by the way.
Yeah.
That really make it easy. And so that's why I'm interested in learning more about the IP NFT and the DAOs, because maybe we could add like another layer on JOGL as well, like, or collaborate with existing DAOs, that some projects that wants to become products and needs IP to become product could do that through DAOs, for example. But
so JOGL is not structured as a DAO at the moment.
No. It's the thing is we're basically doing decentralized science before DAOs, and just showing that we don't need actually a DAO to do that. Also, we are trying to propose an alternative vision, which is not to do purely decentralized science. It's also about doing community science or community-driven science, and to bring back the human factor at the center. Because if you try actually to remove the human factor and try to decentralize everything like what is the market today, I'm not sure that science is going to work better this way, because I think it's a lot of little human interactions.
Yeah, and you need people in the same room,
exactly,
at least in the same city,
to create this trust as well. So you need. So the way we created trust was not just through peer review. It was also because we organized a lot of community calls. People actually could present each other. They could, that's how they started wanting to collaborate with each other as well. So it's yeah. I think DAOs are great for to liquidify the investment approach of science, but at the end you will need this community layer, and also when it comes to having a healthy ecosystem, you do need commons. Software is a great example. If you didn't have all these open source libraries, it would be so much harder actually to create a project in software.
Yeah. So what are the primitives in decentralized science? So we have the software primitives, but how will that translate into science?
You need data, data sets that are completely open. They become commons that can be openly shared and fed by the community, upgraded. You need a certain type of tools as well that let me give you an example. There are a lot of small niches in scientific research or innovation where just to help, some people are innovating on just because they need actually to facilitate their own process. I don't know, like to analyze certain kind of sample in a given context. Let's say you're in Africa in the bush and you want to do some kind of PCR, and I don't know, but it's, or you're basically you want actually to hold your tubes in a certain way, and so you're going to use 3D printer to make like a holder, and this will not become a product, right? But however, if you can share this invention openly, so that others can 3D print that for themselves, etc. So there are a lot of small ideas like that.
Really simple tools to organize your laboratory.
A lot of low-tech ideas and projects that needs to be propagated as well. And that's the idea. Also, it's about the democratization aspect of things. Is how do you create like the equivalent of generics? So, for example, like PCR machines, centrifuges, like lab equipment that have been there for forever, but they still cost a lot. And there is a huge movement through, for example, the biohacking of the DIY bio movement I've been part of since the beginning. It has been pushing for low cost open source lab equipment.
And so, for example, how much would the centrifuge cost?
Well, the typical lab centrifuge would be probably around 10,000 euros.
Oh wow! So 3 times a normal grant size.
Oh yeah, but now actually you have some open source lab centrifuges that are more like 1,000. That's completely open source. Same with PCR machine. PCR machines used to cost at least 15 to 20,000 euros. But now you actually find some that are less than 1,000.
And this is because they can be 3D printed?
No, I mean it's some parts are 3D printed, but it's more like the parts themselves are cheap.
Okay.
And the manufacturers had some kind of monopoly, and because their customers were big laboratories, big grants. They had enough money to spend them, so they didn't care about the price. But now that we are in this, democratization of biology, there are smaller laboratories, amateurs as well, that needs these machines. They cannot afford 10K or 15K, even 1,000 sometimes. So you will find actually a lot of effort in the community trying to design these simple machines. But at the end, they serve the rest of the community, of the scientific community as well, because it just brings down the cost of doing research.
Yeah, and it is a virtuous circle. As the decentralized science community grows, the market for manufacturers to produce these cheap components increases.
Absolutely. To give you another example, we are building a program dedicated to plastic waste for developing solutions to take care of plastic waste in low and middle income countries. And it's mostly in these countries where plastic is an issue, to be honest. That's where the plastic waste...
Because we send all of our plastic there.
And there are a lot of people trying to build businesses, there to take care of the plastic, but they do it in a very, very simple way. They don't have any capacity to do R&D, to develop better technologies for doing this. So the idea is, let's bring a community, of makers, doers, researchers, NGOs together and say, let's identify first, what are the best low-cost open source solutions that we can find for doing depollution, recycling, etc. Let's see if we can improve them collectively. Do we have to create some new ones? And then at the end, everything is going to be peer-reviewed, evaluated, so that we have a list, of open source assets and technologies that are, validated by an interdisciplinary professional community. And this also becomes available to any local entrepreneurs that wants to take one of these solutions and implement it locally to create a business. And then, so all the R&D would be funded by JOGL and the community and partners. We would encourage, because there is a lot of bullshit in the plastic waste industry, and so we would encourage peer review. So other doers, entrepreneurs will have actually to review other entrepreneurs' projects, and solutions, and likewise in return. So people will realize that, okay, that's smart, that's not good, and they will start probably to converge, and because it's open source. So at the end, it's really about who is going to come up first, but how, as a community, are we going to create the best project possible, and then share it to the planet. And then we'll have also funding for helping local entrepreneurs kickstart their businesses. So this way, you create as much as an open asset for of solution, an open list of solutions for dealing with plastic waste, in a monetary wise manner that is cheap. And you can also encourage local entrepreneurs to use these assets to deal with plastic waste. So you have as much stimulating research, and you also stimulating who are people dealing with the problem locally. And so you can imagine doing this for so many other areas like agriculture, that so many farmers don't have the ability to experiment, in the way they would like to experiment, for example. So they're kind of dependent on what the big companies want to do. So here it's how do you provide freedom again? How do you liberate the farmers?
Do you mean that they're limited with the fertilizers that they can buy and things like that?
Could be that they want to develop new methodology to use less fertilizer. It's fertilizer. And maybe they want to also maybe create their own GMOs, for example, where they're completely free of reusing them, and so it's more like as you bring a high enough critical mass of farmers and scientists and makers, and they'll probably be able actually to do great experiments in a robust way, share the results, and at the end, it's like a cooperative basically, and where they will be aware of the results of the transparency. They'll be able to influence directly how they want to do things. I think, and they will be rewarded for this as well. So they're not just going to be a buyer. They'll be paid actually to participate to the experiment, so that they don't lose any money at all doing this. So I think it's more like, how do you involve? No, when you look at the innovation ecosystem, it's a lot of high elite individuals that went through like top universities, and from developed countries. But the thing is, this is not enough. Like there are just too much actually to solve, and so especially there are problems that are completely invisible to these elites. So how do you empower group of people that just want to solve their own problem, but they don't have the capacity to do it because they're not structured in the right way?
Yeah. I mean, I've got a background in creative production, and it's often the case that the people producing the images or the video or whatever are on the ground floor. They notice the problems that they're facing in their day-to-day work, and they have potential solutions, but they have to be heard by upper management to implement them. And that pathway to getting your idea heard by people in power is really tough.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're describing a similar situation in agriculture and in farming. And
yeah, like from people in the field who are just buying the solutions to the ones building those solutions. And there has always been a disconnection. Researchers are famous to be disconnected from user reality. They are, in their own ivory tower. So again, it's like, how do you reconnect first, and how do you bring also individuals who are, smart, capable, educated, motivated to this game, even though they don't have like the right title, they didn't went through like the right path, to get recognition or whatever. So it's more about, we're all in the same boat. So if you want to contribute, please do so. To give you an example, I started this journey with an experimentation that I did around cancer, where it's like, maybe we can mobilize a community that is going to help us understand cancer using big data. So that's data science, that's medicine, so interdisciplinarity. You need collaboration for this to happen. I did this collaboration with Roche. So it's
in a Rush.
In Roche with the pharmaceutical company.
Oh, Roche. Okay.
Yeah. And so they accepted the deal that everything that would be produced by the community would be completely open source. But it brought Roche to open source. And funny enough, I was amazed at the fact that on the first edition we mobilized more than 350 people, and 2/3 of these people were professionals.
How did you contact them?
Through a lot of different forums. That was back in 2015. So it's a lot of forums, events, mouth-to-mouth, messaging, and so a lot of them were professionals. About 2/3 of them, and 1/3 were students. But to give you an example, like data scientists working in banks, we are highly paid. They are like, research can afford talents like that, but here they could actually come and participate because everything was prepared, so they could just actually work on their 3 hours easily. They could understand what they could work on because it was well framed, and people could express their needs. They could meet easily with researchers or other medical.
And this was wet lab.
No, it was only based on data. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as a proof of concept, it was much easier to do that. But we just showed that using this community approach was a great way actually to harvest, intellectual power from people that were completely disconnected from research or innovation so far. So at the end, it's like, how do you demultiply the number of contributors to the production of knowledge, and that's kind of like the vision on the long term is how do you get the largest army tomorrow that is much more capable, in the way they get organized for the ideas, their resources, their peer review, to attack like large scale problems or also local problems. It's just to say that Yeah, everybody agrees that the framework of what are universities is outdated. It was great in the 20th century, pre-internet, where you needed brains and resources to be in the same place, and you needed a vetting process to see, okay, whom am I going to bet, that much money on that much time, because usually you will become actually a researcher for life. But now we have so much mobility that and we can actually collaborate with anybody on the planet. That having physical infrastructure, lifelong, contract doesn't make sense anymore. And like so being able actually to bringing even people like for just a few weeks, and giving them like very small amounts so that they can test things and then share, like this kind of dynamics would be completely impossible using the university system.
Yeah.
Even in the company framework. So what I see is this would completely change the way anybody could have a try, get into a network of people where they can grow as an individual, culture their creativity, their skills, learn, in the process, test new ideas, create their own community, working on their own problem. Like there are so many underexplored problem, like for example, medicine for women. And there are a lot of initiatives being built right now to recover that gap. But they just have to go through like the traditional way of mobilizing like researchers and funding. It's kind of slow.
So what are the barriers to scaling at the moment?
The culture. Most people involved in research and innovation don't know yet that this is possible. Once they tested it, like they don't want to come back. But they don't think that this is feasible because they've been educated that this is the only set of rules possible to do science.
Yeah.
That's for the individuals, and then the institutions themselves, like the funding agencies, foundations. They have protocols where they can only give money to us in certain ways, to certain type of organizations. So it's a lot of work. We do this work, this education work with these organizations, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did your initial funding come from?
It came actually from a foundation. No, wait. It actually came from a company, from Sanofi.
Sanofi.
Yeah, it's one of the largest pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And it was back in 2019. We worked on vaccination just before COVID, and it was a 6 months program. And they had worked previously with the head of innovation of Sanofi in my previous organization, and where I tested this cancer program, this community approach to cancer program. And she really loved the concept. And then she moved to Sanofi, and we wanted actually to do something else together, this time on vaccination, which is one of the biggest topic at Sanofi. And so through this program, that's how we started JOGL. But the real JOGL was really born through COVID.
Yeah.
And at that time, our main funding came from the AXA Research Fund, which is a philanthropic arm of the AXA Group, the largest insurance company.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was already discussing with the head of the AXA Research Fund before COVID, in order to launch an initiative in Africa to facilitate research communities. And so when COVID hit, and I saw like we had like this massive input of ideas and talents, and projects were amazing, and I could see like they just needed like small amount of money to really make a proof of concept. And so I reached out to her. It's like, I know that this is not your typical grant demand, because you normally found only with universities and research laboratories. But here, I just gave the examples of the project and ideas, and how much we would need, to support them. And she's like, "Oh, wow, it's amazing! Like, let's do it." And it's, to be honest, it's the fastest I've ever seen actually a grant being rewarded, because from the moment I contacted her and the moment we got the grant was only 3 weeks. And then thanks to that, we started funding the project, and the dynamic was sustained, and the rest is history.
Are the projects feeding back into the treasury? So are you?
So indirectly, there were actually a couple of projects that were funded and didn't actually went all the way they wanted to go. Didn't terminate what their main objectives. And even though it was not something that was mandatory for them, like they could just give the money, this actually to give back what they didn't use.
Okay.
Just to give you also the sense of responsibility and sharing, like the level of sharing.
But there's no profit sharing as yet.
No, because everything is super early stage.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I realized I forgot to introduce you at the beginning.
It's okay, we can do it.
And it was definitely recording, right? Okay. So Guten Morgen. I'm here at the Code Technical. What is this place? I don't even know where I am.
Yeah.
Code University of Applied Science. Okay. I need to. Code University of Applied Science. Okay. So, Guten Morgen. I'm here at the Code University of Applied Sciences in Berlin, Germany, and sitting here with Thomas Landrain, if I pronounced that correctly.
Hi.
From JOGL, which JOGL, which stands for
Just One Giant Lab. I don't know if you like.
No. I think we'll probably do. Let's do that one more time.
Okay.
And then the editor can sort it out.
Perfect.
This is the first time I've ever interviewed anybody.
Well, you're doing great. You're doing great, man.
Okay. So, Code University of Applied Sciences.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here. My name's Andrew. Good morning, everyone. My name's Andrew Ridge. I'm currently at Wind Ranger, who are core contributors to the BitDAO ecosystem. And I'm here at the Code University of Applied Sciences in Berlin, Germany, at DJI Berlin. And I'm here sitting with Thomas Landrain, who is from JOGL, JOGL, which stands for
Just One Giant Lab.
And JOGL is, as far as I understand, a collaboration of decentralized scientists, researchers, product innovators who are coming together in a decentralized way and actually have been for a long time, right?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. We basically started doing this adventure in 2019, having the same vision as what DJI Berlin is having here, this whole DAO ecosystem, but without Web3. And I would say in a more community-driven approach. And additionally, more interested in how communities can help build what normal academia and normal companies cannot, which are commons, like open source knowledge, open source technologies, tools that can be easily shared with the rest of an ecosystem, and really what are the basis of what is a good, healthy ecosystem.
Cool. Well, Thomas, thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Woohoo! Hopefully, I think we got enough footage so that the editors can put it all together. But that was amazing. Thanks so much. Yeah. Really fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating.